The darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions as the human destroyer Dauntless moved through the outer border of Terran territory. Captain Minu sat in his command chair, watching the stars drift past on the main. It was supposed to be a routine patrol, nothing more than a standard check of the sector before returning to base. His crew had been joking about what they would do on shore leave just an hour ago. Everything changed when the sensors started screaming. Lieutenant Park looked up from her navigation console, her face going pale. "Captain, we have a contact. It's massive, reading as 5 times our size." Minu stood up slowly, his eyes fixed on the screen as a ship materialized from the darkness. It was enormous, a dreadnought that made the Dauntless look like a child's toy. The hull was dark, almost black, covered in strange markings that seemed to pulse with a faint red glow. Weapon ports lined every surface, each one larger than the Dauntless's entire weapons array. Whispered Engineer Lee from his station. Everyone on the bridge felt their blood run cold at the name. The Empire had been sweeping across this part of the galaxy for decades, crushing every species that stood in their way. They took no prisoners and offered no mercy. Entire civilizations had been wiped out for refusing to submit to their rule. Communications officer's console lit up with an incoming transmission. She looked at Minu with wide eyes. "Captain, they're hailing us." "Put it through," Minu said, keeping his voice steady even though his heart was pounding. The flickered and a face appeared. It was not human, that much was clear. The commander had 4 eyes arranged vertically on an elongated head, and his skin looked like rough stone. When he spoke, his words were translated by the computer into broken but understandable human language. "Primitive vessel, you have violated space. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. You have 20 seconds to comply. Failure means destruction." A timer appeared on the screen, 20 seconds counting down, 19, 18. The bridge was silent. Everyone knew what being boarded meant. They would take the ship, interrogate the crew for information about Earth's defenses, and then execute them. There were stories from other species, tales of torture and suffering that lasted for days. No one who was taken by the ever came home. Captain's voice was shaking. "What do we do?" Minu looked around at his crew. They were young, most of them. Was fresh out of the academy. This was her first deep space assignment. Had a wife and 2 children waiting for him back on Mars. Was engaged to be married in 3 months. They all had lives, futures, dreams. 17 seconds. Minu thought about his own family. He had lost them 5 years ago when they attacked a civilian colony ship. His wife and daughter had been on that ship, heading to a new settlement on the edge of human space. They had destroyed it without warning, without reason. 2,000 people dead in an instant, just because they happened to be in space they claimed as their own. 15 seconds. He remembered the investigation that followed. The questions asked by politicians and admirals who wanted to avoid a war. Maybe the colony ship had been in the wrong place. Maybe it was all a misunderstanding. Maybe if humans were just more careful, more respectful of territory, they would be left alone. But Minu knew the truth. They did not care about misunderstandings or respect. They cared about power and dominance. Every species that tried to appease them, that tried to negotiate or show weakness, was destroyed anyway. It just took a little longer. 13 seconds. "Weapons officer," Minu said quietly. "Transfer all power from weapons and shields to the engines." Looked up from his console, confused. "Sir." "Do it now," Minu ordered. 12 seconds. "Plot a collision course with that dreadnought. Maximum speed." The bridge erupted in shocked voices, stared at him like he had lost his mind. "Captain, that's suicide." "No," Minu said firmly. "Suicide is surrendering to them. This is fighting back." 10 seconds. Was already at his controls, rerouting power. The Dauntless began to hum as energy flooded into the engines. "Captain, if we push the engines this hard, they'll burn out. We won't be able to stop." "We're not trying to stop," Minyu replied. He turned to, "Send a message to Earth. Tell them what happened here. Tell them we had 20 seconds to surrender." 9 seconds. His fingers flew across her console, tears streaming down her face as she typed. "Message sent, sir. Encrypted and compressed. They'll know what we did." "Good," Minyu said. He sat back down in his chair and gripped the armrests. "Everyone, secure your stations. This is going to be rough." 8 seconds. On the dreadnought, High Commander Al watched the human ship with growing confusion. His sensors showed the small vessel accelerating, not powering down. It was moving toward them, not away. "What are they doing?" he demanded. His tactical officer checked the readings twice. "Commander, they are on an intercept course. All their power is going to engines." "Impossible," Al growled. "No species is that foolish. They must be trying to flee at an angle." But the numbers did not lie. The human ship was coming straight at them. 6 seconds. "Evasive maneuvers," Al roared. "Move us out of their path." But the dreadnought was massive, designed for overwhelming firepower, not for quick movements. The engines fired, trying to push the enormous vessel to the side, but it was too slow. 5 seconds. On the Dauntless, Minyu looked at his crew one last time. "It has been an honor serving with all of you. Remember, we are human. We do not kneel." "We do not kneel," his crew repeated, their voices strong despite their fear. 3 seconds. The Dauntless screamed through space, moving faster than it was ever designed to go. The hull shook and groaned under the stress. Warning alarms blared from every console. 2 seconds. Minyu closed his eyes and saw his wife's face, his daughter's smile. "For you," he whispered. "For all of us." 1 second. The dreadnought filled the entire. Its weapons began to fire, energy beams lancing out, but they were too late. 0. The Dauntless struck the dreadnought at relativistic speed. For a brief moment, the impact created a light brighter than a star. Captain Nam had been a scout pilot for 12 years, and he thought he had seen everything. He was wrong. The Sentinel was a small ship, designed for stealth and observation. It sat hidden in the shadow of a large asteroid, running on minimal power to avoid detection. And his crew had been monitoring the border for 3 days, watching for any activity. It was boring work, but someone had to do it. "Captain, I'm picking up 2 ships," said Tactical Officer Han. "One is the Dauntless, the other is a big one." Felt his stomach drop. "Can we help them?" Shook her head. "Not against that, it's a dreadnought class. We'd be destroyed before we got close." "Record everything," ordered. "If the Dauntless is lost, at least Earth will know what happened." They watched as the ship appeared on their screens, massive and threatening. They saw the transmission go out, though they could not hear the words. They saw the timer appear. 20 seconds, whispered, reading the data. "They're giving them 20 seconds to surrender." The bridge crew watched in tense silence as the seconds ticked away. They expected to see the Dauntless power down its weapons, to see it try to flee, or maybe to see it destroyed when it refused to comply. They did not expect what actually happened. "Captain," said, her voice rising, "the Dauntless is accelerating. They're heading straight for the dreadnought." "What?" Leaned forward, staring at the tactical display. "Are their controls damaged? Are they trying to evade?" "No, sir, this is deliberate. They've transferred all power to engines. They're going for a ramming attack." Could not believe it. Ramming was a desperate tactic, something from ancient naval battles on Earth's oceans, not modern space combat. Ships were too valuable, crews too precious. You did not throw away a destroyer and 40 lives just to damage an enemy vessel. But as he watched the Dauntless pick up speed, moving faster and faster toward the ship, he realized that Captain Minyu had made a different calculation. It was not about the value of one ship versus another. It was about sending a message. The dreadnought began to move, trying to evade, but it was too late. The Dauntless struck it like a bullet hitting a wall. The impact was catastrophic. Even from their hidden position, the Sentinel's shields automatically raised to protect against the wave of energy that radiated out from the collision. The Dreadnought's shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, did nothing against the kinetic force. The Dauntless punched through the hull like it was paper, penetrating deep into the vessel's interior. Secondary explosions began immediately as critical systems were destroyed. The Dreadnought's reactor, designed to power its massive weapons, became unstable. "Oh my God," breathed. The ship was breaking apart. Huge sections of hull tore away, spinning off into space. Atmosphere vented in massive plumes of frozen gas. More explosions rippled through the structure as power conduits ruptured and ammunition stores detonated. Within 2 minutes, the mighty dreadnought that had seemed invincible was nothing but debris. The bridge of the Sentinel was completely silent, found that he could not speak, could not think. He had just watched 40 humans die, but they had taken a dreadnought with them. A ship that size would have had a crew of at least 3,000. One human ship had destroyed a vessel 75 times larger. "Did that really just happen?" someone asked quietly. "Get me everything," finally managed to say. "Every sensor reading, every piece of data, all the video footage. Compile it and send it to Earth immediately. Priority Alpha transmission." "Sir, that will give away our position," warned. "I don't care," said. "Earth needs to know about this. The whole fleet needs to know. Hell, the whole human race needs to know what Captain and his crew just did." The data package was sent, compressed and encrypted, but powerful enough to reach Earth within hours. Kept the Sentinel in position, still recording, watching as the debris field slowly expanded. Somewhere in that mess of twisted metal and frozen bodies were the remains of the Dauntless and her crew. "They didn't have to do that," said softly. "They could have run, maybe they could have escaped." "No," replied. "The dreadnought was faster. They would have been caught and destroyed. Or worse, captured. Captain knew that. He gave them 20 seconds to surrender, but he understood what that really meant. So he chose to fight the only way he could. By killing himself and his crew. By showing that humans will never give up," said. "By proving that even when we're outmatched, we're still dangerous. That ship cost the years of construction and billions of credits. It was one of their most powerful vessels. And now it's gone because they thought they could intimidate us." 3 hours later, the data reached Earth. It was immediately classified and brought to the highest levels of government and military command. Admiral watched the footage 5 times in her office, her hands shaking. She had known Minu. He had served under her command 10 years ago before he lost his family. She remembered him as careful and thoughtful, not reckless. But as she watched him make his final decision, she understood. This was not recklessness. This was calculation. Cold, clear calculation about what humanity needed in this moment. Called an emergency meeting of the Joint Chiefs. They gathered in the secure conference room, and she played the footage for them without comment. When it finished, Admiral Shin spoke first. "He sacrificed his ship and crew to take out one dreadnought. That's not a good exchange rate." "It's not about the exchange rate," replied. "It's about what happens next. They have been pushing into our space for years. They destroyed that colony ship. They've been testing our borders, seeing how we react. Every species they've encountered either fled or surrendered. We just showed them that humans do neither." "We showed them that we're willing to die," another admiral said. "No," corrected. "We showed them that we're willing to make them die. There's a difference. Every commander is going to think twice now before approaching a human ship. They're going to wonder if we'll do it again. And that doubt, that hesitation, that's worth more than one dreadnought." President O entered the room, his face grave. He had been briefed on the situation during the flight over. "I understand the military significance," he said, "but we're talking about 40 people who died. How do I explain this to their families?" "You tell them the truth," said. "You tell them that their sons and daughters, husbands and wives, they saved Earth. Because if the thought we would surrender when threatened, they would keep coming. They would demand more and more until they showed up in our solar system with 100 dreadnoughts and told us we had 20 seconds to give up our entire planet. The room was quiet as everyone absorbed that. There's something else, continued. Communications intercepted some transmissions. They're confused. They can't understand why we would do this. In their entire history of conquest, no species has ever responded to a surrender demand with an attack. They literally don't have a tactical doctrine for dealing with this kind of behavior. President leaned back in his chair. So what do we do now? Looked around the room at the other military leaders. She saw her own determination reflected in their faces. Now we make sure Captain's sacrifice means something. We prepare for war. The video leaked within 24 hours. Someone in the military, someone who thought the public deserved to know, released the footage from the Sentinel. Within minutes it was everywhere. Every news channel, every social media feed, every screen in every human settlement from Earth to the outer colonies. People watched in silence as the Dauntless accelerated toward the massive dreadnought. They heard the final transmission that had sent, her voice steady despite the fear. They gave us 20 seconds. We gave them our answer. Remember us. Remember that humans don't kneel. The response was immediate and overwhelming. In cities across Earth, people gathered in the streets. They did not riot or panic. Instead, they stood together in silence, holding candles and images of the 40 crew members who had died. Someone started singing an old military song, and soon thousands of voices joined in. On Mars, in the main colony dome, workers stopped in the middle of their shifts. The factories went quiet. Everyone watched the footage on the public screens, and when it ended, they went back to work with a new intensity. Production numbers doubled overnight as people volunteered for extra shifts. In the outer colonies, where the threat of attack was most real, the reaction was even stronger. Recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers. Lines stretched for blocks as young people signed up to join the military. They all said the same thing. They wanted to serve on a ship like the Dauntless. President O addressed the entire Terran coalition 2 days after the incident. His speech was broadcast to every human settlement, every ship, every outpost. 2 days ago, 40 of our brothers and sisters made the ultimate sacrifice. Captain Minu and the crew of the Dauntless faced an impossible choice. They could surrender and be captured, tortured, and killed. They could try to run and be destroyed, or they could fight back the only way they could. They chose to fight. He paused, letting the words sink in. The Empire thought they could intimidate us. They thought that if they gave us 20 seconds, we would beg for mercy like every other species they've encountered. They were wrong. Humans don't beg, humans don't kneel, and humans never ever give up. The president's voice grew stronger. Today, I am announcing that the Terran coalition is mobilizing for war. Every shipyard will operate at maximum capacity. Every factory will be converted to military production. We will build a fleet that makes the regret ever entering our space. And we will name the first new destroyer the Dauntless II, so that Captain's legacy continues. The crowds watching the speech erupted in cheers, but was not finished. To the Empire I say this. You gave us 20 seconds. That was your first mistake. Your second mistake will be whatever you do next, because now you're facing a species that would rather die fighting than live under your rule. And I promise you, we will make you pay for every light year of space you've taken from us. Fleet Admiral Shin watched the president's speech from the naval headquarters on Luna. She had a lot of work to do. The military had contingency plans for various scenarios, but none of them really prepared for this. They were going to war against an empire that had conquered dozens of species and controlled a significant portion of the galaxy. It's impossible, one of her subordinates said, looking at the tactical projections. They have thousands of ships. We have maybe 200 combat-capable vessels. Then we build more, replied simply, and we fight smarter. The Dauntless proved something important. Our ships might be smaller, but mass times velocity equals force. A destroyer moving at full speed can take out a dreadnought. We just have to be willing to do it. You're talking about suicide tactics, another officer objected. I'm talking about asymmetric warfare, corrected. Yes, the Dauntless was destroyed, but they took a ship worth 100 times their value with them. If we can maintain that ratio, we win. They have more ships than us, but they can't afford to lose them at the rate we're willing to lose ours. She pulled up a new tactical display. We're implementing Protocol Menu, named after Captain. It's a new combat doctrine based on what he did. We'll design ships specifically for high-speed ramming attacks, small, fast, with reinforced prows and powerful engines. And here's the key difference. We'll add emergency escape pods that can launch at the last second. The crew doesn't have to die. The ship hits the target, the crew evacuates, and we pick them up afterward. The officers looked at each other. It was crazy. It was brilliant. It might actually work. We'll call them Menu-class attack craft, continued. Start production immediately. I want the first squadron ready in 3 months. While the military planned, something unexpected was happening among the civilian population. A woman named, who had survived the attack on that colony ship 5 years ago, appeared on the public news channels with a message. I knew Minu's wife and daughter, she said, her eyes burning with intensity. They were my friends. They died when they destroyed our ship without warning or reason. Now Minu has avenged them, but his fight can't end with his death. The military is doing their part, but we can do ours too. Explained her plan. Civilian ships, freighters, mining vessels, even luxury yachts could be converted into weapons. They were not as fast or as tough as military ships, but they did not need to be. They just needed to be able to hit a target. I'm forming a volunteer corps, she announced. Anyone with a ship can join. We'll coordinate with the military, but we'll fight our own way. They think civilians are weak, that we'll hide while the military fights for us. Let's prove them wrong. The response was overwhelming. Within a week had 5,000 volunteers. Within a month, she had 50,000. People donated their ships, their time, their lives to the cause. Engineers worked around the clock to retrofit civilian vessels with basic weapons and reinforced hulls. The military was initially hesitant about working with civilians, but Fleet Admiral saw the opportunity. Let them do it, she told her staff. They won't expect civilian ships to attack. That gives us an advantage. And frankly, we need every advantage we can get. Ambassador was tasked with a different kind of mission. He began reaching out to other species, especially those that had been conquered or threatened by the response was cautious at first. Most species had learned that opposing them meant death. But then showed them the footage of the Dauntless. He showed them what 40 humans had done to a dreadnought, and he asked a simple question. What could your species do if you fought back? On a world called, subjugated by for 30 years, the footage sparked something that had been dormant. A resistance movement began to form. They sent a secret message to, if humans are willing to fight, so are we. Similar messages came from other worlds. Species that had surrendered, that had given up hope, suddenly saw a possibility. If the tiny human species could stand up to maybe they could too. The Empire watched all of this with growing concern. Fleet Commander studied the reports from his intelligence officers. This is spreading, he said. The humans are inspiring rebellion across our territory. It's just one incident, his advisor said. One ship got lucky. Lucky pulled up the tactical analysis. They transferred all power to engines, calculated a perfect intercept course, and executed it flawlessly while under threat of immediate destruction. That's not luck. That's skill, courage, and determination, and it's spreading like a virus. He made his decision. Assemble the Grand Fleet, every available ship. We're going to crush the humans completely and show the entire galaxy what happens to those who defy us. We'll destroy Earth itself if we have to. His advisor hesitated. "Commander, that's 300 ships. It will leave our other territories vulnerable." "I don't care," said. "If we don't stop this now, we'll lose everything. The humans have shown other species that we can be hurt, that we can be killed. We have to destroy them utterly, or our entire empire will fall apart." Orders went out across space. Ships were recalled from patrol duties, from garrison posts, from border stations. The largest military mobilization in history began, all of it focused on one target, Earth. Commander Lee stood in the massive construction bay, watching as the first Minu-class attack craft took shape. It looked nothing like a traditional military vessel, where normal ships were designed for prolonged combat, with balanced systems and multiple redundancies. The Minu-class was built for one purpose: to hit the enemy hard and fast. "It's smaller than I expected," said one of the engineers. "That's the point," replied. "Small means fast. Fast means the enemy can't track us easily, and if they can't track us, they can't stop us." The ship's bow was reinforced with layers of ultra-dense alloy, designed to punch through enemy shields and hull plating. Behind that was a massive engine that took up nearly half the vessel's interior space. The crew compartment was minimal, just enough room for 3 people: a pilot, a navigator, and a systems operator. "Show me the escape system," ordered. The engineer pulled up a holographic display. The entire crew compartment is an escape pod. When the pilot triggers it, the pod separates from the ship and launches perpendicular to the attack vector. Acceleration is brutal but survivable. The pod has enough supplies for 48 hours and a strong beacon for recovery. "What's the survival rate in simulations?" 85%, sir. If they trigger at the right moment and if there are recovery ships nearby." Nodded. It was not perfect, but it was better than the 0% survival rate of a traditional ramming attack. Captain Minu and his crew had died to prove that ramming could work. His job was to make sure future crews could survive using the same tactic. "How many can we build per month?" "At current production rates, about 50, but that's going to increase as more factories come online." "Not fast enough," said. "Double the shifts, triple them if you have to. They are coming and we need these ships ready." Across the solar system, similar scenes were playing out at every shipyard and manufacturing facility. The Terran coalition had gone from peacetime production to total war mobilization in less than 3 weeks. It was chaotic, inefficient, and absolutely necessary. In the asteroid belt, mining colonies had converted their equipment to extract and process the raw materials needed for ship construction. Giant ore haulers, normally slow and ponderous, were being retrofitted with weapons and armor plating. They would never be fast, but they did not need to be. They just needed to be tough enough to get close to a ship. Was one of the first pilots selected for the Minu-class program. She was young, only 26, but she had been flying since she was 16. Her scores in the simulators were exceptional, her reaction times among the fastest in the fleet. "You understand what you're volunteering for?" Admiral Shin asked her during the interview. "Yes, ma'am," replied. "I'll be flying directly at enemy capital ships at maximum speed. I'll have maybe 5 seconds to trigger the escape pod before impact. And if something goes wrong, if the pod fails to separate or you miss the window, then I die taking a ship with me," said simply. "Just like Captain did. Ma'am, I've seen the footage 100 times. I've read every report. I understand the risks. But this is the only way we can fight them. They're bigger than us, stronger than us, but we're faster and we're more willing to take risks. That's our advantage." Studied the young pilot's face. There was no bravado there, no false courage, just a clear-eyed understanding of what needed to be done. "You're approved. Report to training facility on Luna. You'll be part of the first squadron." "Thank you, ma'am. I won't let you down." "I know you won't," said. "That's why I chose you." While the military prepared for battle, civilian volunteer corps was becoming a force of its own. What had started as a handful of converted freighters had grown into a massive fleet of improvised warships. They were not pretty or elegant, but they were numerous, and their crews were motivated. Stood on the command deck of her flagship, a converted mining ship called the Defiance. It had been a bulk ore carrier before the war, hauling rocks from the asteroid belt to processing facilities on Mars. Now it was covered in welded armor plates and mounting a collection of weapons that would have been illegal 3 months ago. "We're not trying to win battles," she told her squadron commanders during a briefing. "Let the military do that. Our job is to be a distraction, to make the split their attention. Every shot they fire at us is a shot. They're not firing at a military vessel. Every minute they spend dealing with us is a minute the real warships can use to get into position." "Some of us won't make it back," one commander said quietly. "No, we won't," agreed. "This isn't a game, this isn't pretend. They will kill us if they can, but we're not doing this because it's safe. We're doing it because it's right. They destroyed my home, killed my friends. They've done the same to millions of others across the galaxy. Someone has to stand up to them, and if the governments and militaries won't do it alone, then we'll help." The room was silent for a moment, then one commander stood up. "For the Dauntless," she said. "For the Dauntless," the others repeated, standing as well. On Earth, communications specialist Song was working on a different kind of weapon. She was part of a team assigned to crack military codes. It was difficult work, made harder by the fact that they had very little communication data to work with. But then they got lucky. The dreadnought that the Dauntless had destroyed had been transmitting constantly until the moment of impact. The Sentinel had recorded everything, and her team spent weeks analyzing the data, looking for patterns in the encrypted signals. "I think I've got something," she announced one night after 16 straight hours at her computer. "They use a quantum encryption system, but it's not perfect. There's a flaw in how they handle error correction. We can exploit it." Her supervisor looked over her shoulder at the screen. "Can you decrypt their messages?" "Not all of them and not quickly, but I can get enough to understand their tactical communications, troop movements, ship positions, command structure. If we can intercept their signals during battle, we can know what they're planning before they do it." "This could change everything," the supervisor said. "It already has," replied. "I've been monitoring channels for the past 3 days. They're assembling a fleet, a big one. They're calling it the Grand Fleet. 300 ships all heading toward Earth." The room went cold. 300 ships. Even with all their preparations, the entire Terran coalition only had about 200 military vessels and maybe 300 civilian ships. They would be outnumbered, and the information went straight to Admiral Shin. She called an emergency meeting of the Joint Chiefs and the President. 300 ships, President O said, staring at the tactical projection. "When will they arrive?" "Based on their current speed, about 3 months," replied. "They're coming from different parts of their empire, so they'll gather at a staging point first. That gives us time." "Time for what? To evacuate Earth?" "No," said firmly. "Time to prepare. We've been working under the assumption that they would attack eventually. Now we know when. We can choose our battlefield, set our traps, position our forces exactly where we need them." "Can we win?" the president asked. Hesitated. "If we fight them in open space, ship to ship, no. They have superior numbers and firepower. But if we're smart, if we use every advantage we have, every trick, every desperate tactic, then yes. We can win. It won't be pretty and it won't be cheap, but we can win." "What do you need?" "Everything," said. "Every ship that can fly, every weapon that can fire, every person willing to fight. This is going to be the biggest battle in human history, possibly the biggest battle in the history of this entire region of space. When it's over, either humanity will have proven we deserve a place in the galaxy, or we'll be extinct." President stood up. "Then we'd better make sure we win. You have full authorization. Whatever you need, whoever you need, take it. The entire resources of the Terran Coalition are at your disposal. Saluted, "Thank you, Mr. President. I won't let humanity down." As the meeting broke up, pulled aside, "Can you keep monitoring their communications?" "Yes, ma'am. I've set up an automated system. We'll know every move they make." "Good, because I'm going to need you during the battle. I need someone who can listen to their chatter and tell me what they're planning in real time." Felt a chill run down her spine. She had thought she would be safe on Earth, working from a bunker somewhere. Now Admiral was asking her to be on a ship during the battle. "I understand, ma'am," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. Smiled, "Don't worry. You'll be on the flagship with me. It's the most heavily defended ship in the fleet, probably the safest place you can be during a space battle." Did not point out that there was no safe place during a battle against 300 warships. She just nodded and went back to her monitoring station. They were coming, and they would bring everything they had. Humanity would have to do the same. The Grand Fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system exactly 3 months after the Dauntless incident. War Master stood on the bridge of his flagship, and surveyed his armada. 300 warships, the largest force the Empire had ever assembled. It was beautiful and terrifying. "All ships report ready," his tactical officer announced. "Weapons charged, shields at maximum. We await your command." Studied the long-range scans. The human home system lay before them, and somewhere in that direction was Earth, the blue world that had spawned this troublesome species. "Send a final message to the humans. Tell them they have one chance to surrender completely. If they refuse, we will destroy every ship, every station, every settlement until nothing remains." The message was sent. The reply came back within minutes, audio only, from Admiral Shin herself. "You gave Captain Minyu and his crew 20 seconds to surrender. They gave you their answer. This is ours." Smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "So they choose death. Very well, all ships advance. Maximum combat formation, destroy everything." The Grand Fleet moved forward, a massive wall of ships that blotted out the stars. They expected to find a desperate defensive line, perhaps clustered around Earth or the larger colonies. They expected panic and chaos. What they found was silence. The system appeared empty. Scans showed no military vessels, no defensive stations, just the normal civilian traffic of a populated star system going about its business. "It's a trap," said immediately. "Increase scanning power, find them." But the advanced sensors showed nothing. The fleet moved deeper into the system, past the outer planets, past the asteroid belt. They were halfway to Mars before anything happened. "Contact," the tactical officer shouted. "Multiple ships emerging from behind the moon." The human fleet appeared, but it was not what expected. Instead of forming a traditional battle line, the ships spread out in a chaotic swarm. There were military destroyers, yes, but also hundreds of civilian vessels, mining ships, freighters, even personal yachts. It looked less like a military fleet and more like an angry mob. "What are they doing?" demanded. "This isn't a formation, this is chaos." On the bridge of the Terran flagship Unity, Admiral Shin watched her tactical display with satisfaction. "That's exactly what we want them to think. All civilian squadrons, begin your attack runs. Military vessels, hold position until my signal." Commanding the Civilian Volunteer Corps from her converted mining ship Defiance, received the order and grinned. "All ships, you know what to do. Hit them hard and make it hurt." 300 civilian vessels broke formation and charged directly at the fleet. They were not coordinated or professional, but they were numerous and they were fearless. The fleet commanders, used to facing organized military opponents, did not know how to respond to this chaos. "They're attacking," could not believe it. "Civilian ships, fire at will, destroy them all." The dreadnoughts opened up with their massive weapons, energy beams lancing through space. Civilian ships died, exploding in bright flashes. but there were so many of them, coming from so many directions, that the gunners could not track them all. Defiance took a glancing hit that sheared off half her starboard side, but the ship kept coming. She had reinforced the bow specifically for ramming, and she was going to use it. All power to engines. Let's show them how humans fight. The Defiance slammed into a cruiser at full speed. The impact crumpled the mining ship's entire front section, but it also tore a massive hole in the cruiser's hull, triggered the emergency evacuation system, and escape pods began launching from the dying vessel. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Civilian ships, piloted by people who had no military training but plenty of courage, threw themselves at the fleet. Some died before reaching their targets. Others managed to land devastating blows before being destroyed. The chaos was overwhelming. "Now," Admiral said calmly, "launch the Minu squadrons." From hidden positions throughout the system, 50 small attack craft emerged. They were the first production run of the Minu-class fighters, each one piloted by the best flyer in the fleet. Led the first squadron, her ship painted with the words "For the Dauntless" in bright letters. "All fighters pick your targets and go for the engines," she ordered. "Remember your training, in and out. We're not trying to die, we're trying to hurt them." The Minu-class ships were fast, far faster than anything in the fleet. They darted through the chaos of the battle, avoiding enemy fire with sharp turns and sudden accelerations that would have killed pilots in normal ships. But the Minu pilots had trained specifically for this, using high-G suits and reinforced seats to survive the brutal maneuvers. Selected a dreadnought and accelerated toward it. Enemy fire filled the space around her, but she weaved through it, her hands steady on the controls. At the last second, she triggered a spread of missiles that struck the dreadnought's point defense systems, creating a brief opening. "Going in," she said, and pushed her throttle to maximum. The Minu-class ship struck the dreadnought's engine section at incredible speed. The reinforced prow punched through the armor like a spear, counted to 3 in her head, then hit the emergency release. The entire cockpit section separated from the ship and launched away at right angles to her attack vector. The acceleration slammed her back into her seat with crushing force, but she stayed conscious. Behind her, her ship continued forward, its momentum carrying it deep into the dreadnought's engine core. The explosion was massive. The dreadnought's reactor went critical, and the entire back half of the ship disintegrated. Its escape pod tumbled through space, automatic systems already transmitting her position to recovery ships. "Splash 1 dreadnought," she reported, trying to catch her breath. "I'm okay, pod is functional." Across the battlefield, other Minu pilots were executing similar attacks. Not all of them succeeded. Some were shot down before reaching their targets. Others triggered their escape pods too late and were caught in the explosions, but enough got through to cause devastation. Onda watched his fleet being torn apart by an enemy that refused to fight by the rules. "This is madness. They're using civilian ships as weapons. They're committing suicide." "No, sir," his tactical officer said, pointing at the display. "Look, the military pilots are escaping. Those small attack ships, they have escape systems. The pilots survive." Felt something he had not experienced in his 300 years of warfare: fear. The humans had found a way to make suicide tactics survivable. They could attack his dreadnoughts with impunity, losing only the ships, not the crews. And they had hundreds of civilian vessels that were willing to die to take his ships with them. "Fall back," he ordered. "Reform the line. We need to create a defensive perimeter." But retreating in the middle of a battle was nearly impossible, especially against an enemy that attacked from all directions. As the fleet tried to pull back, the human military vessels finally engaged. Destroyers and cruisers that had been holding back suddenly surged forward, their weapons firing at the now disorganized formation. Song, sitting at her console on the Unity, was listening to the tactical channels. "Admiral, I'm picking up confusion in their command structure. Multiple ships are requesting new orders, but there's no clear response. I think we've disrupted their chain of command." "Excellent," Admiral said. "Send this message on their command frequency." She handed a data chip, plugged it in and transmitted. The message went out in the language, broadcast on every military channel. "You gave us 20 seconds. We're giving you none." The psychological effect was immediate. Captains, already shaken by the unconventional tactics, heard the message and thought they were facing an enemy that had completely infiltrated their communications. Panic spread through the fleet. Tried to restore order, but it was too late. His fleet was breaking apart under the combined pressure of civilian ramming attacks, precision strikes from the Minu squadrons, and now a full assault from the human military fleet. Ships began to retreat individually, breaking formation to escape. "No," roared, "hold your positions, we still outnumber them." But numbers did not matter when your fleet was scattered and demoralized. Another dreadnought exploded as 3 civilian ships hit it simultaneously. A cruiser went dark after a Minu fighter destroyed its command bridge. Everywhere he looked, saw his proud armada being torn apart by an enemy that should have been easy to crush. "Sir, we've lost 70 ships," the tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. "Casualties are over 50,000. If we stay, we'll lose the entire fleet." Looked at the tactical display one more time. The humans were still swarming, still attacking, showing no signs of exhaustion or fear. They fought like they had nothing to lose because, in a way, they did not. This was their home system. There was nowhere to retreat to. "Signal the fleet," he said, his voice hollow. "General retreat. All ships faster than light jump as soon as possible. We're leaving." The fleet fled. Some ships did not make it, destroyed by human attacks before they could escape. Others limped away damaged, trailing atmosphere and debris. Of the 300 ships that had entered the Sol system, only 47 made it out intact. On the Unity, Admiral watched the enemy retreat and allowed herself a small smile. "Cease fire. Let them go. Begin recovery operations for all escape pods and survivors." The bridge crew erupted in cheers. They had won. Against impossible odds, outnumbered, and humanity had turned back the largest fleet ever assembled. President O appeared on the transmitting from Earth. "Admiral Shin, I'm watching the reports. Is it true? Did we really win?" "Yes," Mr. President replied. "They are retreating. The Sol system is secure." "What were our losses?" Smile faded. "Heavy, sir. We lost over 200 civilian ships and 40 military vessels. Casualty estimates are still coming in, but it's going to be in the thousands." The bridge went quiet. Yes, they had won, but the cost had been enormous. Thousands of people who had volunteered to defend their home would never see it again. But they had not died for nothing. Across the galaxy, species that had been conquered by the watched footage of the battle. They saw civilian humans ramming warships. They saw military pilots attacking dreadnoughts with suicide tactics and surviving. They saw an empire that had seemed invincible driven away in defeat. Resistance movements began on a dozen worlds. Messages poured in from species asking to join humanity's alliance. The empire, which had seemed unstoppable, began to crumble as subject species rose up in rebellion. 6 months later, a monument was erected on Luna, visible from Earth. It was a massive sculpture showing the Dauntless in its final moments, accelerating toward the dreadnought. At the base were the names of all 40 crew members who had died that day. The inscription read, "They had 20 seconds to choose. They chose defiance. They chose courage. They chose humanity." Stood before the monument in her dress uniform, wearing the medals she had earned in the battle. She had made 3 successful ramming attacks during the fight, escaping each time. She was being hailed as a hero, but she did not feel like one. "We just did what you did," she said quietly to the memorial. "We learned from you. Thank you for showing us the way." Behind her approached, leaning on a cane from injuries sustained when the Defiance was destroyed. She looked at the monument for a long moment. They changed everything, didn't they? Yes, agreed. They showed the galaxy that humans don't surrender, ever. And now everyone knows, said. The other species, everyone. When you give a human 20 seconds to surrender, they'll use those 20 seconds to figure out how to hurt you instead. Smiled, good, let them know, let everyone know. Humanity doesn't kneel. Above them, new ships were being constructed in orbital yards. The dauntless II was nearly complete, joined by dozens of other vessels. The war was not over, but humanity had proven they could fight and win. And the entire galaxy had learned a simple truth. Never give humans just 20 seconds. Because 20 seconds is all they need to decide they would rather die fighting than live under anyone's rule.